All right, welcome to today's edition of Tech Support for Michael Malice, where we ask the audience live to weigh in on what the fuck is happening with Michael Malice's webcam. If you've ever thought to yourself, I want to hear Michael Malice talk about Putin and the WNBA dildo meltdown on live broadcast, on a live broadcast after my bedtime, then you are in luck tonight, because the one and only Michael Malice is here with us. He's host of You're Welcome, of course, and he's the author of Not Sick of Winning, A History of President Trump's First 100 Days. Michael, what's up?
So for everyone out there in TV land, apparently there's an issue with Zoom, and it's not unique to me, that when certain people use it on their computers, it just starts glitching like that, like the Matrix. It was really bad when I was in Corolla. We tested it beforehand yesterday. It was fine. So if anyone out there knows what to do for us boomers, please let us know. I searched Reddit. I searched the internet. I turned off the HDR, rebooted my computer. No one had any answers, and it's only with Zoom.
I like it. I think it reminds us that you are indeed mortal and human. It's so easy to forget. You're like this man. He says things that are so, they just ring so true. It's hard to, you're fallible at the end of the day, Michael.
Just because I'm mortal doesn't mean I'm fallible.
Okay. Well, that's, I guess, a different conversation.
That's right.
We needn't get into. But I did want to start, this is such a fun segue. I did want to start with Vladimir Putin, Michael. We try to generally do the more serious news at the top of the show. And in this case, I do want to go ahead and put up on the screen here a report from Axios that shows, for example, I'll put it up. Putin proposed summit with Trump at the White House. So news broke today that Donald Trump is going to meet with Vladimir Putin. Putin actually proposed it, according to this Axios report, to Steve Witkoff. And it looks like we're expecting this in the coming days. This is a story that was given to Axios. It says that Caroline Levitt said that Trump was, quote, open to meeting with both President Putin and President Zelensky and wants this brutal war to end. And this is part of another, I guess, chapter in Donald Trump's roller coaster relationship with Vladimir Putin. But Michael, you're one of the most interesting voices on this. So what do you make of Donald Trump now talking about actually sitting across the table from Vladimir Putin?
Well, I have some inside information on this. A few weeks ago at my house, I hosted the QAnon shaman. He stayed in my guest bedroom. I thought I owed him one because if it wasn't for him, somebody else would have been in jail. And we were having lunch at an organic restaurant because he eats organic. And he points to the TV where Putin and Trump were talking about their negotiating a ceasefire. I'm sure people remember when this happened a couple of weeks ago. And he turns to me and he says, I did that. So we could thank him for using his ley lines talents to ensure that this war is being brought to a swift, not as swift as either of us, I think, would like, Emily, resolution. I think, as you and I discussed, I think previously, Trump made a blunder. Because if there's one thing Russians know from years of Soviet oppression, and I speak from, being born there, it's to exploit people's weaknesses, right? So if Trump is on the campaign trail and in the White House bragging, I'm going to bring peace, well, Putin knows, okay, this guy's put his reputation on the line. I can extract a lot of concessions from him because otherwise I'm going to play him for a fool, even if I just run the clock out for 4 years. So he's obviously a very conniving, intelligent figure. I think Americans have grown to understand that this guy is no dummy. And I'm very hopeful, but I don't know what that deal is going to look like. I mean, it's probably going to look like Zelensky having hand over, a couple of those provinces in the east. But if Putin knows that that's kind of the starting point, why wouldn't he ask for more?
Yeah. Well, this was such a signature campaign promise for
Right.
Trump. I mean, he talked all the time about being able to end the war in 24 hours. And I think people in the Beltway sort of underestimate how resonant just his calls to end war in general. I mean, people can call it naive, but his calls for peace, that is really resonant with the American people who were just completely exhausted by the Biden administration, both in the Middle East and in Russia, what they saw, I think rightfully, as bungling of both of those conflicts. So what could, I mean, your point about what this deal would look like, I agree. I think that sounds likely, but it also seems like that's something that could have already happened in the last 6 months. So am I wrong on that? Like, what what could happen now that hasn't already happened if they're face to face?
And the other thing is, if Trump and Putin get their handshake deal, he still has to sell it to Ukraine, and he has to sell it to NATO. And I don't know that that's a given at all. I think NATO, very much has like basically a gun to the back of Zelensky's head, telling him don't take a deal. A lot of people are making a lot of money from this war, and also giving kind of a sense of gravitas in Europe that I'm kind of strong, confident leader. I'm standing behind the Ukrainian people, even though they're getting butchered. So there's four parties involved here. And five, I guess, if you count the UK separate from NATO in a sense.
Well, six if you count the Q shaman.
Yeah, that's right. The biggest, most important figure who Shaw was sitting down with. So I'm very sad. It's just, I was born there. I was trying to go back, and then COVID hit, and then the war. So I never visited since I left when I was 2 years old. And, your heart breaks also for the Russian people. This isn't fun for anybody, and for what? So I don't know how he's going to sell this deal. Except at a certain point, everyone's just going to have to be exhausted. And I don't think the Europeans are. I think they're itching for a fight.
Well, okay, so talk to me more about Putin in that respect, because I think that's part of what Trump may have underestimated, or Steve Witkoff may have underestimated, or actually maybe the broader sort of anti-war movement in the United States may have underestimated, is that Putin keeps throwing more and more people into a meat grinder. It's like an incredible level of death and destruction that has been happening for years now, and feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And it doesn't seem like he feels as though he's being squeezed at this point. I mean, we hear a lot of bluster from more neoconservative figures in the American right, or the American, I guess, center left too at this point. And some of it's true. I mean, it is true that things aren't amazing in Russia right now, but whether or not that means people want the war to end, and whether or not that means Putin thinks he has some type of political pressure to end the war, is a completely different question, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, and also this is how they won World War II. So we don't get to tell this story in American schools, but I would encourage everyone here to just go to the Wikipedia and look at Russian losses during World War II versus American losses. Many of them were preventable because Stalin never thought his good buddy Hitler was going to turn on him like he did. But the losses they suffered in Leningrad, the siege of Leningrad, which is civilians largely, and also militarily, it was just astronomical orders of magnitude more than we did. So this is part of the Russian kind of narrative and ethos. So for them, it's kind of like this call to arms, like, we're regaining what we've lost. We can't give up now. And, for a long time, it was two polar world, the Soviet Union, the US. That fell away, obviously, in the end of the late 80s, early 90s. And Putin's now put Russia as like a sense of importance. And, the American president is kind of, trying to cut a deal with him and treating him with respect. So I think there's a lot of pride for the Russian people as a result of this. And that's a very dangerous thing in this context, because I think we could all do with a little less pride, a little bit more peace.
Well, and some of those voices who have been saying, the Russian economy is in shambles and Putin is under pressure will also, I think we can predict, Michael, freak out if Donald Trump reaches some sort of deal with Putin next week. And maybe even if he gets support, or an inkling of support from the Ukrainian camp for something that looks like actually ceding territory in the Donbass. We can predict that there will be hysteria, there will be a freak out, some of which will come from people who are making money off the conflict or benefiting in different ways from the conflict. But that's going to be, he's going to have to sell that deal to the public. And that's, can you just tell me what you think happens if we're sitting here a week from now and they have some type of deal that involves ceding territory in the Donbass? What does that pressure look like on Trump, actually? To maybe scuttle a deal that people don't want to see because they're convinced Putin is then going to march into Poland.
And well, not just Putin. The argument is, and it's not crazy, like since World War II, if you allow, some kind of strong country to railroad or just bulldoze another one, where's it going to end, right? So they can say this with a straight face that, like, you sold out the Ukrainians to Putin, who are you going to sell out next? It definitely would embolden our enemies in certain contexts. I'd be worried about Taiwan. I'd be worried about Iran. So at the same time, it's like, this is the difficulties of geopolitics. Like, if the U.S. has its finger in every pie and we're everywhere on Earth, at a certain point, you've got to pick your priorities. So I am supportive of, and I think most Americans in this world are supportive of President Trump pulling back on the American empire. But at the same time, like at a certain point, you also do have to draw your line in the sand. So I'm just very. The other thing is, I think I'm very skeptical that the public is well informed on this issue because both the Ukrainians and the Russians have extremely enormous incentives to keep their mouths shut and downplay certain things and overplay others. So we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I mean, I think that's one of the most bizarre myths of American news is that like international affairs is basically conducted in public. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we all know all sorts. Like the Cuban Missile Crisis with when there were nuclear missiles in Cuba and JFK sat down with Khrushchev. Basically, he got them to pull the missiles from Cuba, but in return, we pulled our missiles from, I believe, Europe. But we weren't allowed to talk. We didn't talk about that part. We only talked about the other part. So JFK looked like a big win, but it was kind of a draw. So these things only come to light, many years later. Please look up, double check what I'm saying in this if I get the facts exactly right. But the point is,
Reagan and Gorbachev were back-channeling as well. We didn't learn about that until later.
Oh yeah, like also, I mean, all sorts of things. Like North Korea, there's no official diplomatic relationships between the U.S. and North Korea, but when they capture people or we go through Sweden or something like that. So there's all sorts of machinations, and I also think foreign policy is the area of American politics that's least receptive to democratic pressures. I mean, the war machine and the military does what it feels like it needs to do or wants to do, very independently of the populace at large. And in one sense, you can't really blame them. In the other sense, it's very unfortunate.
Well, but don't you think that's exactly because of what you just said? So much of it is being conducted behind closed doors. Right. The public can never actually have a full, complete perspective. And the Brookings Institute, AEI people know that. And they can be kind of sneering about it too. But it's not the public's fault that they're not, and rightfully in some cases, privy to every little bit of classified information. Even with Trump, there's almost this illusion because he actually does conduct foreign policy in public often. He's like doing art of the deal through the media in different cases with Putin. He has been doing a lot of that. Even with Netanyahu, he has done a lot of that. So on the one hand, with Trump, there is what he's saying, and it is meant to be part of the negotiating, but you still have, you have a completely incomplete picture until just those little things that we learn decades later are changing what's happening behind the scenes dramatically.
And I'm also very concerned. I did a book on North Korea, dear reader, and when he had the summit in Singapore with Kim Jong-un, with Marshal Kim Jong-un, there were so many people like just giddy at the idea that it would fail. And it's just like, can you put aside your hatred of Trump for 5 minutes? They have concentration camps there. Like the people, they starve children for political purposes. Can you just like for 5 minutes, like stop hating Trump and just hope that something would work out? And obviously it didn't, but it could have. So I'm very concerned that whatever deal he does make, if this had been like a Biden deal, he'd be like up for the Nobel Prize. But if it's Trump making the deal, it's like we have to stop it at all costs because Trump's an idiot and blah, 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 will be the argument. I really wish people had more of a focus on saving lives and less on one-upsmanship. Whatever, you know the term. Sorry, English is my second language.
I don't.
One-upmanship, there you go.
That sounds right to me. We'll go with it. But yeah, that's one of the... let me try this out on you, because I think the last 100 years plus of foreign policy across the entire world it's just been so dramatically and quickly changed by nuclear innovation. That's period. Right. And it happened so quickly that we were like the frogs in the boiling pot, and we didn't know exactly how dramatic this change was, and got used to these strange negotiations. Like people will always say nuclear technology has been an incredible success and win for peace. And there are all kinds of problems with that claim, but we're a blink of an eye in the course of human history into this experiment. It's like, right. if this is a 100-day experiment, we're like halfway through the first hour. And that's terrifying in ways I think we just are numb to, not us, but I think a lot of people here in DC are completely numb to, and it's scary sometimes. Like right now, honestly, it's scary.
Yeah, and you saw this when Trump was like ranting. He's like, I'm trying to prevent, when he was yelling at Zelensky in the Oval Office, when he's like, I'm trying to prevent World War III. Like, I mean, millions and billions of people could die instantly. Putin obviously has a huge nuclear arsenal. So it's like, what are we doing here? Again, I think discussed this previously at another time, is that Putin is getting away with it because no one is arguing that we're going to go to Moscow and take him out. So he's not having these kind of consequences that like Saddam had for Kuwait or something like that. Years later, they came back to so-called finish the job, which was obviously a huge calamity. So someone's cutting a deal at some point, and like what will, compromise is something that everyone can live with, but nobody likes. That's what it's going to look like. And I mean, the Ukrainian people are very proud people. They despise the Russians. The Russians with good reason. I don't blame them one bit, but many parts of the eastern Ukraine would be more than happy to be part of Russia. And at a certain point, it's like, something has to happen.
Yeah, I think this will be my last question before we move on to the much more serious topic of Texas Democrats running away from their jobs. But it's that point about what ultimately happened. Like, you couldn't say that when the war started.
Right.
And it's not a situation that anyone's particularly happy about, except for Putin, of course, but it's just reality. And we're kept so, I think, cushioned from reality because exactly what you said earlier, there's just a control over the media narrative on foreign policy by people who are in the know and in the loop that keeps everyone else sort of at an arm's length from the truth. I don't know.
And I got to shout out to Katie McFarland. She was a member of Trump's cabinet the first term for a brief period. I was with her in the Fox News green room during the Obama years. So this would have been before 2016. And she goes, watch, Putin's going to march in Ukraine. He sees a weakness, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, you crazy old warmonger lady, neocon. And man, she called it. So credit to KT for calling it way ahead of time. I think we all thought there's not going to be a war in Europe in our lifetimes. Those days are over. Man, we were wrong. The period, end of story. And she saw it.
That's interesting because we think of a lot of Cold War people as neoconservative now, but they weren't at the time. I mean, some of them, but a lot of them were actually like mad at Reagan for negotiating with Gorbachev.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a funny dynamic if you're on the right to see play out these days.
No, certainly.
Michael, let's move on to Texas Dems. You're in Texas, aren't you? You're a Texas
Austin,
man.
baby. Yes, ma'am.
Let's do it. All right. So I'm going to put on the screen this funny headline from Fox News about probably maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm just going to take a wild guess. Your hero, Beto O'Rourke, someone...
You know why I love Beto O'Rourke and that you're going to agree with? Beto O'Rourke is the politician of all politicians who's been able to have the lowest ROI in terms of getting investment. He's like a startup which has never produced anything but can still fund round after round after round. He ran for president. He ran for senator. Didn't he run for governor also? I don't remember what it was. He went nowhere in any of those things. And even though he's married to a billionaire, he managed to raise so much crazy money. So that guy's doing something right, other than getting elected.
It's something. We'll talk about it. Here's the headline. It's Beto O'Rourke asked point blank why he's helping Dems flee Texas rather than helping Texans. This is a question that Beto got actually on CNN. Of all places, CNN asked this because they're assisting with these 500 per day fines for people who are, as Fox says, quote unquote, skipping the legislative session. If people have been following this story, Texas Democrats, and maybe you can even bring us in on this because you are a Texas correspondent now, Michael Malice, but they've left. You don't just cover North Korea. You cover Texas Dems. They've left. They haven't gone to North Korea, but they've scattered to different places. I think they're in Illinois. And Beto has a group that's helping assist with it. And I think CNN basically asked him, well, why aren't you using this to assist people in Texas? So I actually have complicated feelings anytime that we're talking about gerrymandering, Michael, because it's such a stupid political football. I think it is like legitimately a problem that both parties exploit and love to use when it suits their interests and whatever. Nobody has the moral high ground here. But with the Texas Democrats, this stunt is coming across as so completely sanctimonious. They're trying to leave because Texas Republicans want to redistrict to add 5 more congressional seats. Trump has spoken out in favor of it. Am I getting something wrong here, or is this just sort of a hilarious stunt?
Well, I think it was the governor of Massachusetts. I think it's Carrie Healy, is that who, if I'm not mistaken,
The
or
hell would
Martha
I know?
Coakley, one of them. She said, "Well, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to gerrymander
Hmm.
Massachusetts so there's no Republican congressman, and there aren't any already. It's all Democratic So it's just like, well, you did it. Mission accomplished. There's a campaign promise you fulfilled instantly. They've done this before in other states, and I don't know what the point is. Frankly, I don't know if you saw this, but Governor Abbott has like arrest warrants for them, civil arrest warrants,
Yeah, the
if they don't come
FBI.
back.
John Cornyn has actually suggested, Senator John Cornyn, who is up for re-election and probably wants to look cool in front of his MAGA friends, has suggested that the FBI actually pursue these people for like dereliction of their oath of office, essentially. So do you get the sense that Republicans are actually itching to escalate here?
I think Republicans have been itching to I think you and have been at this for a minute, in like covering politics. Republicans have been itching for a fight for like decades at this point. And the fact that Trump is delivering in any sense is shocking. We saw this with Tulsi, and we saw this, with some of the stuff that Cash is doing in D.C. Like they're just giddy that for once Republicans are fighting back. That Trump is fighting back at these universities. That Trump is fighting back in 60 Minutes and the corporate press. So this has not happened in our lifetime. And I'm a bit older than you. This has not been a thing. It's like they talk and talk and talk. When George W. Bush got into the White House in 2001, the first thing he did, oh, I'm frozen. The first thing he did is tell the Attorney General, we're not going to pursue the Clinton issues any further. So I'm just ecstatic that something like this is actually happening. And I don't think the FBI is literally going to arrest them, but you have to punish bad behavior.
Right. So you don't think the FBI is literally going to arrest them?
Do you?
No, I mean, well, but you just don't know because listen, like the Trump administration right now has two wars that they wanted to end. They have the Epstein files that still are dividing MAGA. It's not everybody's most important issue, but it's still pissing people off. So particularly with the FBI's involvement and the DOJ's involvement in that, sometimes those pressures push people into doing crazy things, Michael. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be really hard to make any kind of charges stick. Frankly, I'm just in favor of all politicians being arrested. But whatever, I
Yes.
don't really get what I want as an anarchist when it comes to politics.
Right. You're very much disenfranchised.
That is le mot juste, perfectly said. Yes,
You're one of our vulnerable, a member of one of our vulnerable populations. We
very
don't often think
marginalized.
about the anarchists.
Will someone please think of the anarchists? We have all this dynamite and so few targets we can use them on.
So on that note, you had a good tweet about NPR and all of the posturing, blustering about NPR for years that I want to get to after a quick break. So stick around, Michael Malice, stick around, everyone. First, just want to say, over the years, I have, of course, been clear about this. I'm not just pro-birth, I am pro-life, and being pro-life means standing with mothers not only before their baby is born, but long after. And that is exactly why I very happily partner with Preborn. Preborn is great. Preborn doesn't just save babies, they make motherhood abundantly possible. They provide free ultrasounds and share the truth of the gospel with women in crisis, and then they stay with real practical help, including financial support for up to 2 years after the baby is born. This is what true Christ-centered compassion looks like, not just for the baby, but for the mother too. And here's where you can make a difference. Just $28 provides a free life-saving ultrasound. One chance for a mother to see her baby. And when she does, she's twice as likely to choose life. Amazing. Preborn is trying to save 70,000 babies this year. So don't just say you're pro-life, live it. Help save babies and support mothers today. Go to preborn.com/Emily or call 855-601-2229. That's preborn.com/Emily. We are joined by former baby Michael Malice. That is the only way I've discovered to transition from those ads back to a guest at this point.
I did just poop myself. So
Oh, God.
I want to talk a bit about that ad because I think it's terrific.
Let's hear it.
And I don't know if I'm sure you've probably seen this, but what they just talked about in the UK, they just passed a bill basically legalizing abortion until birth.
Yeah.
And all the media over there covered it in terms like, oh, women's healthcare rights are being enforced by the Starmer Parliament. And it's just like, if you read it, you would think yesterday it was like, it's if you try to get a condom, you go to jail.
It's hard to keep up.
And today, like women have abortion, in the first trimester kind of policy, even if you're pro-choice.
Yeah. I mean, their culture war can sometimes be even more interesting than the American culture war. I feel like we get all the credit for having the great culture war, but sometimes they're competitive with our culture war.
But I mean, as you know, there's several states where abortion until birth is legal. And we're told this is not a thing. And it's just like, you're gaslighting us. Like, what are you talking about? And how do you defend this?
Exactly. It's completely crazy. You have a governor in Virginia. This was Trump's first term. You had governor in New York. So that's Ralph Northam, Andrew Cuomo, who were doing the thing. And they were proudly doing the thing. And then the media was telling you either, A, they're not doing it. This is a right-wing conspiracy theory being spread by people who don't have teeth. Or the other option is, yes, they're doing it, but it's actually good. And anybody who tells you otherwise hates women, which I don't know when did that become an insult, hating women. But on the other hand, it's also just stupid and patently, wrong to be against this. That was a joke, Michael, about hating women. Wrong.
I hate women, but I still don't think you should be allowed to kill their babies.
Yeah, or them as babies.
Right. Yes.
Which is what happens when you do things like legalize abortion up to birth. Guess which babies start suffering the most? They're girls and they're minorities. So well done, everyone.
Here's the other thing that the pro-life people got right. They were very much ahead of the game talking about a physician-assisted suicide.
Yep.
Right? And we saw this happening. It got legalized in Europe and in Canada. And the argument from pro-life people, which was spot on, is like, once you devalue the sanctity of life, it's not a slippery slope, it's an elevator shaft. And now we see teenagers who are depressed, people from ex-military with PTSD being encouraged to take fatal choices. This is demonic and shameless. And I'm shocked that more people, I'm not religious, but like, I can't look at this and not be like, this is as low as it gets. To encourage someone who is not, maybe end of days, you got stage 4, you got 6 months, like you're on a machine, you're like, all right, it's a wrap. I get it. That's not what this is at all.
No.
And it's just shocking to me how this isn't like the biggest issue.
Well, and I teased this by saying we were going to segue into NPR, but actually what we're going to do here is roll this clip of Jim Acosta interviewing
oh my God.
AI. Yeah, you've been on this, Michael, and it's exactly tied into what you were just talking about. And I think it's something, you said the pro-life people were right. Well, the core of the pro-life argument is that at the moment of conception, and people can disagree in the science, but at the moment of conception, you have a new piece of unique human DNA that is alive. Therefore, you have a human life, in other words. And so anything that happens after that point, this is my perspective, is ending a human life. And the reason that's important as technology increases, I shouldn't say increases, but as technology shifts, is that you actually end up devaluing the sanctity of a unique human life. So let's roll S1 and just buckle up if you haven't seen this yet.
Joaquin, I would like to know what your solution would be for gun violence.
Great question. I believe in a mix of stronger gun control laws, mental health support, and community engagement. We need to create safe spaces for conversations and connections, making sure everyone feels seen and heard. It's about building a culture of kindness and understanding. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea, Joaquin.
So that was an AI rendering of Joaquin, one of the kids who was killed, I believe, when he was 17 in the Parkland school shooting. Now, the parents of Joaquin are gun control activists and gave Jim Acosta permission to interview, I won't say their son, though some in media have said their son, because that is not their son. That's not fully human, and it's deeply uncomfortable to watch. Michael, we can, of course, put ourselves in the shoes of the parents to the best of our ability and say, they're looking for comfort. People don't always look for comfort in the right places, and this seems very obviously to be an example of that.
They're not looking for comfort at all. They're waving their son's corpse around for political purposes. A couple of things. Let me go off on this, because this really bothered me. First of all, Why is anyone listening to a teenager's opinions about gun rights at all?
Well, we don't even know that they would have been his opinions.
But even if
that's what's so messed up.
Even if they are his opinions, who cares? Some high schooler has opinions about gun issues. I don't care. Why should I care? That makes no sense. Number one. Number two is, if there's one thing teenage boys like, it's repeating what their parents told them to say. Like, what? What are you talking about? I did the same thing. I took the son, and it's on my Twitter. I animated him, and he said, "Mom, Dad, please let me rest. Propaganda doesn't come from heaven; it comes from hell." I'm gonna start going darker with it, because to exploit your dead son for political purposes is in such a stupid way. It is so horrific. It's like almost like Munchausen's with a corpse. And for Jim, the idea that, here's the other thing that's crazy. If like you and I like kind of interviewed Siri, maybe we didn't know what she'd say, but this script was programmed. So it's not an interview if you know what the person is going to even say. It would make more sense for him to interview Grok, because Grok at least generates it spontaneously. This was a script.
And Acosta, Glenn Greenwald pointed this out. Acosta has gotten basically across the board like bipartisan revulsion in reaction to his stunt. And I think that's interesting. I don't know if you've seen something similar. It's always hard to tell because we're all in our own little bubbles. But have you seen something similar to that? And do you think it's important that it was at least ostensibly sort of bipartisan revulsion at what happened here?
So, I mean, I'm going to use a slightly vulgar word.
By all means.
You know how much of a bad person you have to be the biggest prick at CNN? Like, look who you're compared to. And he was. And they drove him out of town in a rail. They tried to move him to LA, even though he's like the politics correspondent. And they gave him like a morning slot, and they basically forced him to quit because they were just sick of his BS. People here watching this might remember during the first term when Acosta's in the Oval Office with, I think, Trump was president of Turkmenistan, one of the stands. I'm sorry, but I don't remember the guys. Uzbekistan, one of them. And Acosta goes, "Oh, do you want more immigrants?" He goes, "I want them to come from everywhere." And he's like, "You mean the white country, sir? Not the," and Trump just goes out. And it's like, you're humiliating the president in front of a foreign leader for what? For your own like S's and giggles? Like, you're a bad person. And the thing that's hilarious about Acosta, you and I both, I'm sure, probably me more than you because I'm not as nice as you, have to deal with a lot of crap on social media. You put yourself out there, people are going to go after you. Acosta locks all his comments because he's so stupid. He thinks he could transfer his CNN show to the internet and social media and have it go over. It's like, it's not. The dynamic is very different because what we have to deal with is back and forth. Now people feel involved. They like to talk. They like to comment back. It's not always nice. Acosta locks his comments. It's just a broadcast. And it's like, that would make sense on a TV because you can't really talk back to the TV. Sorry, boomers. But on social media, that's not a thing. And I think he's dug himself into a hole, but he's too arrogant and stupid to understand it. And one more thing. I've always said that corporate journalists are literal demons, which are entities that are only human in a biological sense. And this is what I mean. Like, you look at this and like, this is not human behavior. This is something far more pernicious and sinister, because if like 5 years ago, if I told you this was going to happen, you would think I was trolling you.
Right. But that's, I mean, what worries me is that the temptation, we can all be really uncomfortable. Like, we see this and we're like, dude, that's messed up. You shouldn't have done it. Doesn't matter if you're like Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, anarchist, whatever. You watch that and you're like, dude, stop. And then we just keep marching towards quote unquote progress and letting this stuff happen because the temptation is like so seductive. There are people who are in chatbot conversations with their deceased loved ones whose stuff was fed into the AI, emails, text messages, voices, video, fed into an AI, and it's going to get so much more advanced so quickly. I just don't know if we can kind of withstand the temptations.
Well, I am also very concerned, as I'm sure you are, and most people listening to this. I think it's very underreported and rated as an issue how many people are very alone and lonely. In America, I can't speak for the rest of the world. There's a lot of people in this country who, if someone in their family died, wouldn't have one person to call to have comfort. And I think social media furthers that sense of isolation. Plus, when you're a guy and you're completely alone, it's a joke. haha, you're a loser. Oh, you can't get laid. Oh my God, you're pathetic. End yourself. And it's like there's a lot of quality guys and women who are very alone and they don't know why and they're not doing anything wrong. And if they're like, why am I feel this way? I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not a jerk. They want to make that connection desperately. They don't know how. And it's kind of just swept under the rug. And I think that this is kind of like lefty talk, but like, the corporate media and social media has this false sense of relationships. But if you don't talk to a single person, during the day that you have any kind of relationship with, human beings are social animals. That messes with your head. And that's, I think, part of this. Are you going to become friends with like an avatar of Siri or whatever the analogous version of that is? That's what I'm very worried about. And it doesn't end well.
No, and it's just happening really quickly, and nobody's really okay with it. It's like,
Right.
it's nobody's super stoked about it, but it's happening really quickly. You mentioned something. I want to put this essay from Glenn Kessler up on the screen. Glenn Kessler is one of the many people who have since taken buyouts at the Washington Post, or have recently taken buyouts at the Washington Post. They're losing their celebrity masthead so quickly, Michael, quicker than you can say democracy dies in darkness, which also, by the way, he includes in the subheading of his piece, of course. But he talks about over and over again in this essay how Will Lewis, publisher of the Post, asks him at one point, how can we get more Fox News viewers to read the Washington Post? And Kessler talks over and over again in this essay about how that's gnawed at him for years, because he responded to Will Lewis something like, well, we have to tell the truth and they're not going to like that. And it's like, bro, you think you're going to make it on Substack? Like, maybe you can make enough to feed yourself, as Tucker says, journalists eat out of vending machines. Maybe you can continue to do that on Substack or whatever else. But continuing to believe, this is Acosta's a Substacker, Glenn Kessler's a Substacker, Terry Moran is now a Substacker, bloviating about how Donald Trump has such an ugly ego. And it's like conversations from literally 2015 that everybody has moved beyond and hashed out. And you may still disagree with them, but they're no longer salient to the average voter's mind or the political conversation. He would say that's kind of my point. How are we still not talking about why Donald Trump is such an ugly, evil, egomaniacal man? It's like, because people can't feed their children, bro. And that's just like the crazy thing that they don't get. They move to these new media platforms and they bring this old mentality with them, Michael. It drives me completely crazy.
Are you serious? This should be your Christmas.
You're right. I know, I should celebrate.
They're living their Greek tragedy. This is beautiful. The supply of shit-lib journalists far outweighs the demand. These people are completely interchangeable and replaceable. They don't have the capacity. I'm not a nice person, but they don't even have my crappy level of charisma to hold an audience because they're horrible and they're despicable people. And it's hilarious to think that, this building won't stand when I'm gone, and they leave and everyone's like, Taylor Lorenz left. No one cared. She's, now she's doing live streams with 50 viewers. What's that one's name? The Feminist Frequency. She's on the side of a milk carton now. Remember her? She was a big thing in 20. There was this girl freaking out about there's not enough women in video games.
Oh, and wow!
A huge thing with Gamergate. You can't. B can't even get arrested now. So these people come. What about what's her name? Who was the one with the Arab one from? I don't even remember her name. She was everywhere, and then they just dropped them. Cindy Sheehan during the Iraq War. So these people don't have a good shelf life because here's the thing. Any business has to have a competitive advantage. So what am I doing differently than you, Emily? What is Emily doing differently from this other streamer or so on and so forth, right? It's not just like if we have the same ideas, that idea is already on the market. Why am I listening to Glenn Kessler when I could be listening to any of a dozen other people? It never enters his head because these people have been told and believe that they're so unique and special. To talk about, they think Trump's an egomaniac. I honestly think, I swear to you, everything I own, that Trump is far more humble than Jim Acosta. Trump is self-effacing. He jokes about himself. We've all seen it. I've never seen Jim Acosta in any sense make a joke where he's the butt. It's not a thing. And these people have already had the rude awakening. And I am just ecstatic that they're being kind of driven out into the streets.
So I want to use this to talk a little bit about Howard Stern. And I think we have a clip of Trump. So we're in another 10-year cycle where there are leaks to tabloids about Howard Stern potentially leaving SiriusXM, which obviously he was instrumental in blowing up, and Les Moonves at CBS at the time was furious because Stern on his way out promoted SiriusXM on terrestrial, which was horrifying to terrestrial at the time. They didn't really take SiriusXM seriously, but here we are. Howard Stern himself is someone who didn't take podcasts seriously. Back in 2015, he told Bloomberg in a big profile as he was renegotiating his contract then that podcasters were losers. And I guess this is an enormously biased conversation because here we have two podcasters talking about it. But Brian Glenn of Real America's Voice actually asked Donald Trump about the rumors that Howard Stern might be hanging it up, might be done over at SiriusXM. Bear in mind, Howard Trump has become proudly woke. He calls himself woke. He did softball interviews with Joe Biden, with Kamala Harris. He talks about begging Hillary to come on. And so here we go. I'm going to go ahead here and roll this clip of Donald Trump in the White House just this evening being asked by Brian Glenn about Howard Stern.
Brian, I've got an entertainment-based question for you. A few weeks ago, Stephen Colbert announced that he was leaving his show. Howard Stern announced that him and Sirius XM Radio are parting ways. Do you think the hate Trump business model that's been in the entertainment business is going out of business because it's not popular with the American people?
Well, it hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked really for a long time. And I would say pretty much from the beginning, Colbert has no talent. I mean, I could take anybody here. I could go outside on the beautiful streets and pick a couple of people that do just as well or better. They get higher ratings than he did. He's got no talent. Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has talent. They're next. They're going to be going. I hear they're going to be going. I don't know, but I would imagine because they get, Colbert has better ratings than Kimmel or Fallon. You know that. Howard Stern is a name I haven't heard. I used to do a show. We used to have fun. But I haven't heard that name in a long time. What happened? He got terminated?
Yeah, they're going to separate ways because I think offering salary-wise is real low than what he's getting.
You know when he went down?
Whenever you want.
You know when he went down? No, before. When he endorsed Hillary Clinton, he lost his audience.
Right.
People said, give me a break. He went down when he endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Mr. President.
So that's actually kind of an interesting point. Michael, what did you make of that?
Howard Stern is by far the most disappointing figure in our culture in terms of how much of a badass he was to what he's become. Number two is Penn Jillette. For people who don't know what Howard Stern used to be like, here's one of his jokes, and this is very offensive, but doesn't have vulgar language. When he was starting on the radio, he had a bit where he was talking to God, and he tells God that we call my wife's miscarriage Aquaman because he lives in the toilet. This is what the level of his discourse was. When he had rejected book covers for one of his books, one of them is Mein Kampf, the other one is The My Lai Massacre, and there's arms buried waving at him. On the back cover of one of his books, it's him and OJ putting Howard's wife into a meat grinder and OJ giving him the thumbs up. So he was by far the edgiest. He sent one of his minions to interview Jennifer Flowers at her press conference when she revealed her affair with Bill Clinton in '92, and he asked her if Clinton used a condom and if she was planning to sleep with any other presidential candidates. This is what Howard Stern used to be. So to watch him like on his knees, genuflecting in front of Hillary Clinton, if you watch Hillary Clinton with Zach Galifianakis on Between Two Ferns, that was edgier than Stern's interview of her. And Hillary Clinton, by all accounts, off camera, people might not know this, actually has a very good sense of humor. And because it's very kind of sarcastic, she has to hide it. And that's why she comes off as so stilted and robotic. That's the perfect place to see that side of Hillary.
How do you know that?
Saw none of that. Oh, she jokes about killing Vince Foster. Like this you would never see, but if she does it publicly, forget it. It's a wrap.
That's edgy.
Right, that's
She walks around in sweats at home that just say Clinton body count on the back. Right.
So for Stern, what a disgrace. What a horrible. He's just it makes me so sad because so much of me and people my age were raised on him and his show. In fact, there's a book written about me by Harvey Pekar called Ego and Hubris. It's a graphic novel, and the only reason it happened was Harvey got invited to do Stern's show, and then the producer of the movie said, Harvey doesn't have nothing to do. If you want to hang out with him, this is your chance. And that was because of Stern. So I looked up to him a lot in his complete take no prisoners approach. And now it's just, oh my God, like what has become of him? It's so sad and disgusting. And for what? Like, how much money do you need?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's so interesting. I don't know if he's actually going to leave this time. He always does this when he's in the middle of contract negotiations, or at least he always seems to do this when he's in the middle of contract negotiations. It's kind of haggle through the press. It's what we were talking about with foreign policy, actually. Earlier, Michael. We conduct all kinds of business through the press, but if he does leave, I mean, the Daily Mail in their report from their sources that he had at least been telling people he's considering leaving, they said his listenership has gone down like dramatically. They had a figure, I think they were saying like 120,000 people listening to a Stern show, and that means it's similar to Colbert that you're gonna, I mean, you might still be popular with this niche of people, but does that justify to the company the overhead that you carried with you from the old media era where Colbert's overhead was so high that they were losing, according to Puck, like $40 million a year on the number one show, the number one network, broadcast network show in late night. So Stern, I mean, in this weird way, he's almost the victim of his own success. He made the country coarser, he destroyed the gatekeepers, and now he's like pissing on the podcasters on his way out as he's like not even able to like muster his edginess anymore and has been kind of outflanked by them. It's weirdly like Shakespearean. He's
a sad old man in a shitty wig. And this is exactly what he feared becoming, his own dad, and he has. And I'm going to correct Trump. Stephen Colbert is very talented. If people watch his old show, Strangers with Candy.
Strangers with Candy!
I have autographed pictures right above me in my living room of Amy Sedaris as Jerry, where she signed My Ovaries Are Diseased. That show was extremely hilarious. He played her teacher, Mr. Noblet, and he sits her down and says, Jerry, I know you think that I hate you, but I want you to know that I hate you. And she goes, we probably shouldn't hug. He's like, that's right. It was a hilarious show. So Stephen Colbert, I feel bad for his priest because he's apparently a practicing Catholic, because when he sits down after the show ends and asks for forgiveness and his confession for all the things he's done over these years, that priest is going to be like, good Lord, like, I'm just going to take off the collar. To become someone who literally does a song and dance for pharmaceutical companies, like, what are you, how do you look in the mirror? Like, he knows better. Kimmel and it's not, it's just whatever, he's a lefty, but Colbert knows what he's doing, and that to me is far more sinister than anything, you know, some Samantha Bee might have to do.
Ooh, that's an interesting comparison between Kimmel and Colbert.
Don't you think
imagine,
Colbert's much smarter?
Yeah, probably. I mean, imagine having to confess everything about Strangers with Candy to a priest. Father, forgive me. I was on the Comedy Central show in the mid-aughts where I joked about molesting high school students. I mean, of course he is forgiven, but oh my goodness. That show was the weirdest thing probably that's ever been on cable television, and that's saying a lot.
It's up there for sure. Yeah,
it's up there. Before you run, Michael, I teased the NPR post, so I just want to put this on the screen. This is F4. It does tie in with what we were talking about, the Texas Republicans. You posted in 2021, the Republican Party votes to spend money on NPR and doesn't even make a fuss about it. So true, King. And then you did all caps a few days ago. Boy, did this age poorly. I feel so dumb. But don't you think this is all, like, I'm weaving like Trump right here, but this is all the same thing. It's Republicans have realized that everyone has seen the emperor has no clothes. The gatekeepers have no clothes. Sometimes literally, unfortunately, in the case of, what's his name over at, he's back at CNN, Jeffrey Toobin. Sometimes they literally have no clothes, but Republicans have realized that, and they don't know where it's going.
In Jeffrey Toobin's honor, I'm not wearing any pants right now.
Okay. That's if that's how you celebrate Jeffrey Toobin's legacy.
Yes.
It's on you. I don't know what you anarchists get up to.
But Emily, this is something I don't understand, because Trump pulled back a lot of this DEI, and LBJ era, like affirmative action executive orders. And this is actually striking at the heart of some progressive quote unquote accomplishments, right? And they're just sitting on their hands. I'm like, this is a reason to actually freak out. He's really doing things that strike at things that you have put into place, taking things away that are valuable to you. It wasn't that long ago when the Republicans are trying to cut Corporation Public Broadcasting. You're killing Big Bird. You don't want kids to learn. And now it's crickets. I don't understand this disconnect, because this is something you would think it would be easy for them to fight for. It's just like the Republicans hate free education. That's something. It's not true, but they can still yell it with some element of emotional validity to it. But they're not saying anything. I don't understand this. And also, I didn't understand how this. The point of my original tweet in 2021, for decades, the Republicans would just aggressive propaganda. And I'm just shocked how quickly it got defeated.
Yeah. No, I mean, it did. It fell so quickly. That is a great point. Like, it changed on a dime. It was almost like the presidential election in 2024, which people saw as this unlikely comeback from Donald Trump, finally convinced, but not fully. I mean, it's not as though, I'm here in DC. It's not as though you walk around and everyone's like, the public hates us and they distrust us, and all of our, I think they're almost like Trumpian in thinking all of those polls are wrong. Like, that the fact that we're tied at another record low for trust in mass media, according to Gallup, like, I don't think they truly believe that or have internalized that. So it's actually kind of strange, because if they had internalized that, I mean, the Washington Post story we talked about is the perfect symbol. You have Glenn Kessler on the one hand leaving for Substack after being upset because his boss asked him how the paper could broaden their audience. And then you have somebody at the Washington Post finally saying we need to broaden our audience. Like, it's probably too late. I don't know.
I don't know that it's too late, because they've got a great brand name, right? The Washington Post and New York Times are always going to have a little
and lots of money.
And lots of money. So there's something to be said for that. Upton Sinclair in 1934, when he ran for California governor, he'd been a lifelong socialist. He ran as a Democrat because he goes, people will vote for parties that their grandparents voted for. So those brand names really carry a lot of weight. I'm sure people watching this remember the Old Spice ads, when Old Spice was like kind of your grandfather's brand, and they brought it back in those funny commercials and revitalized it. But it's a name everyone is familiar with. So I wouldn't count out the Washington Post at times in the near future. But yeah, like, all he's saying is, all Fox News does is it doesn't tell conservatives that they should jump off a cliff and that they're like basically should be in the Special Olympics. That's all they do. And it's a bridge too far for these like jihadis. I always say corporate journalists are jihadis without the testosterone, and Glenn Kessler is the perfect example of this.
You've used demons, jihadis. Literal I don't know. Demons. You want to go for a trifecta? Yeah, literal demons, jihadis. What else? What else you got for them?
Well, a lot of them seem to like kids, and let's just leave it at that.
Another that happened at the Washington Post again recently, actually.
Yes.
So
it's just a coincidence all the time. Well,
now, finally, last question. I've kept you long, Michael, but I'm just having so much fun. A second dildo, sir, has hit the WNBA. No, it's a third. It's a third. Yeah. Okay. I kind of wanted to do the meme, but I also didn't want to spread fake news. It was kind of a conundrum in my own mind. But this echoes your own posts about NPR. We could put the Sophie Cunningham X posts on the screen. Sophie Cunningham of the great Indiana Fever posted, just sort of like you did with NPR, Michael. She, on August 1st, posted, "Stop throwing dildos on the court. You're going to hurt one of us." And then on August 6th, so literally just today, because she was hit in the leg by a dildo at the last game, posted, "This did not age well." So this is the third WNBA dildo on the court. Is this funny, or is it dangerous, Michael, or is it maybe a little bit of both?
I think women playing sports is always dangerous, because the broads are going to get hurt because they shouldn't be there. They don't know what they're doing. They should be baking. I thought we had finally agreed as a nation that there wouldn't be any more male genitalia in women's sports. And here we go. Yet another broken campaign promise from President Donald Trump.
Who's doing nothing about it, my dad.
Doing nothing.
Hasn't said a damn word about Sophie Cunningham getting hit in the leg by a dildo.
My God, it's horrible. At least it wasn't in the eye, if you know what I mean.
Good. Now I gotta let you go. Michael Malice is the host of You're Welcome, and he is the author of Not Sick of Winning, A History of President Trump's First 100 Days. Michael, I hope this is the first of many appearances you will bless us with here on After Party.
You're using the word blessed a little loosely, but yes, I would be delighted. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks to Michael Malice for joining us on today's show. Hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. Now, let's get to Massa chips. Did you know all chips and fries used to be cooked in tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations switched to cheap processed seed oils? Today, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, and recent studies have linked seed oils to metabolic health issues and inflammation, but Massa did something about it. I think I said this on the last episode. I was very excited to do this ad because these chips, they sent them to me and they completely blew my mind. And then I had my mind blown again when I looked at the back and saw the ingredients list. They're incredible. Massa Chips created a delicious tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients and no seed oil. So it's organic, nixtamalized corn. Sorry, I blundered that one, or I bungled that one on the last episode as well. Sea salt and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. Apparently they don't make you more literate because based on the amount of these chips I've eaten, I never would have messed up that word if they did. But they avoid all of the bad stuff and taste incredible. Massa is crunchier, tastier, and it doesn't break in your guac. Snacking on Massa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Massa, you feel satisfied and light with no crash or bloat afterwards. That is 100% true. Can testify to that. The beef tallow makes the chips satiating so you won't find yourself uncontrollably binging and feeling hungry afterwards. Massa chips is beloved by tens of thousands of customers and has been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts. I genuinely love these chips. They are delicious. Ready to give Massa a try? Go to massachips.com/afterparty and use code afterparty for 25% off your first order. That's massachips.com/afterparty and code afterparty for 25% off your first order. All right, we're going to close the show out today. I mean, I can't possibly follow Michael Malice on the WNBA. That would not even be a good idea to try to compete with Michael Malice on the WNBA. But I do have to say, I want to. If you're on X or if you're on social media, you may have seen this viral post. This is F7 we can put on the screen. Someone was passing around this SOT, and maybe we can play it while I talk. So what you're looking at here is a post from Nick Carter on X. I don't think the Nick Carter of Backstreet Boys fame, but talking about, what happened in 2010 to 2015, man. This is the quote from the post. "We were seized by some kind of faux frontiersman cult for urbanites, probably the worst cultural era in history." It's definitely the peak millennial moment. So in the interest of getting to the bottom of this, I actually do have some interesting thoughts on what it says about our culture, but let's go ahead and roll this SOT. Maybe I'll react to it as we're playing it. This is the Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros song. I can't believe I'm even saying Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros in the year of our Lord 2025. You'll remember it right away. Stomp, clap, home. This is S6. Alabama, Arkansas, takes you right back. I feel like I'm watching an episode of Girls.
Holy moly, me oh my, you're the apple of my eye. Girl, I'll never love another one like you.
Do I see a man bun?
Hey.
Man, oh man, you're my best friend. I dream it too.
I see a fedora.
Well, hot and heavy pumpkin pie, chocolate candy, Jesus Christ, ain't nothing please me more than you. Oh.
So I think this is NPR Tech Desk. Cotton candy, Jesus Christ. That's lovely. Okay, so is Nick Carter correct that this is probably the worst cultural era in history? Nick Carter made that post in response to this Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros song clip going viral and added, this is Stop, Clap, Hey music, Lumineers, Mumford & Sons, Imagine Dragons, etc. Awful, no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Slipped down exposed brick burger halls with signs saying eat on reclaimed barnwood. Dim Edison bulbs served out of a mason jar, facial hair and flannel. I can keep going on. Apothecary core. Every brand became a twee. God, I hadn't seen that word in forever. Heritage liquor and accoutrements. Whiskey as a personality trait. Elaborate glassware setups. What the hell was this? Why did everyone collectively lose their minds? My theory on this is pretty obvious. You can point to one very obvious thing here, and it was the recession. So the early aughts, the Bush era, was a lot of gloss, bubblegum pop, Britney Spears. It was TRL. That's what it felt like. And kind of sci-fi, Matrix, all of that stuff. And I think when the recession hit, millennial culture was being forged, and irony was becoming a defense mechanism during the recession, because it was this sort of balm for the class resentment that people started to feel towards boomers, towards their parents. And, if you can't buy a home, for example, you can ironically dress like your dad, or you could take up the banjo, get really into whiskey. You can start drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon. That was a thing. Do you remember when that was a thing? I mean, I remember when I first moved here to DC, going to a college with a bunch of people from the East Coast, and a bunch of hipster people drinking PBR. And I was like, really? We're doing this? I'm from Wisconsin. I'm for drinking PBR, but if that's where we're going to spend our money, sure. But it really blended seamlessly into what the popular culture is today, now that I think about it. And I hadn't really thought about it until this post started to go viral, and I started to consider the point. But the big difference, I mean, this is a huge distinction, is the irony got dropped. And I think this really became clear in 2024. It was becoming clear if you weren't in elite media bubbles before, but I think 2024 is where everyone woke up and realized, yes, this trad thing has legs. This Maha thing has legs. People are actually looking back and kind of yearning for something simpler. And they have this instinct to rebel against tech. Now, again, that was sort of ironic in the millennial era, because people were posting pictures of their flannels and banjos on Facebook, a big tech company's platform that started to mine our data and become really Orwellian. So it's what's happened since has been the departure of the ironic note in all of it. And I think, if you go back and look at the Edward Sharpe video for that song Home, which again, if you were my age, from 2010 to 2015, it's like the Charlie XCX song, I Don't Care, I love it. That one, I think that is the millennial anthem to this day. That song is just is the anthem of those years, probably. And if you're thinking back on it, I don't care, I love it, right? There's something about it that's it's this ironic nihilism. It's the idea of saying, I don't care, but I am at Occupy Wall Street. I don't care, but I am stoked about Barack Obama. That's what these years were kind of like. And it's interesting to look back on it and see when the irony was dropped, people ended up sort of rebelling against the left and kind of deciding that they liked SUVs or Stagecoach or the Americana aesthetic, not because it felt like, you were wearing a flannel with a man bun, right? There was this kind of ironic juxtaposition that was happening and was really popular and in vogue with millennials. And it just started to feel, for some people, hey, if this is, maybe we don't need to do this ironically. Maybe there is something really wrong with this world. And that's where I think the left has lost some support from Gen Z and from millennials. Gen Z makes fun of millennials all the time, just like millennials made fun of Gen X, and Gen X made fun of boomers. This is a tale as old as time, or at least as old as mass media made our generations so much starker and more distinct, because the mass media you consume when you're of a certain age really is distinct. So I think it's millennial cringe is looking at Taylor Swift saying things like, I don't care, I love it. And she didn't sing that song, but it was the kind of vibe that I'm just, what was this, the song Mean? She was like, you're alone in life and mean. Ultimately I'm going to get over this, but you're just mean. If you remember that. And it's the Edward Sharpe video is filmed this kind of vintage, way for that song Home. But it's like you had these people with like mustaches and flannels and skinny jeans who were super into coffee and craft beer, who would, write poetry, but say, I don't really care, right? Because that ironic detachment was a way to cope with what happened during the recession when, a lot of people ended up in grad school and law school because they couldn't find jobs, taking out massive loans if they graduated from college in 2008, 2009, 2010. People were still having a hard time getting jobs, and they had been told that college was their ticket into the middle class. And there they were looking around and saying, well, when does that start for me? And so I think ironic detachment became pretty... That kind of became that was the driving force behind this millennial culture. I don't know that it was the worst cultural era in history, and I'm not just saying that for self-interested reasons. I think there was something that paved the way to where we are now. I remember when Mumford & Sons and the Lumineers first started getting really popular. There's something about that I think was a reminder. Implicitly to everyone that was also when like Avicii was really popular, right? And they were happening at the same time, and it was this, people were listening to them at the same time. It wasn't like anyone was choosing one or the other, like Dylan Goes Electric and you're on one side or the other. You're on Avicii, or you're either with Avicii or Edward Sharpe. No, it wasn't like that, but it was, I think, a reminder to people that there's a lot of truth in beauty, in things beyond the kind of gloss of the world, and companies like of the tech, the higher, let's say the high tech world. And that was a lot of the aesthetic of pop music and culture in the aughts and the Bush era. And I think that's what was being reacted to by people in this era. And I do think it actually paved the way. The irony was absolutely objectionable and obnoxious. And yes, I don't take any of that back. I think that all remains true. But as I look back on it now, I think it was a pretty interesting stepping stone to people. It ultimately culminates in peak woke, capital P, capital W, because all of these people who were like on Reddit, checking out of the world, were also, creating their own little bubbles. But they were also like helping take down the gatekeepers unintentionally, and ending up in these positions where we're looking around now and saying, we've been told so many untrue things about the world. And there's beauty and truth and simplicity and in nature and all of that. So that makes me sound a little bit like I'm doing a sort of Marxist analysis. The sort of a dialectical analysis of millennial culture creating Gen Z culture, but a little, we'll maybe re-explore that at a later date, whether or not it really is dialectical materialism. But I think that's kind of what we saw happen. That's why millennial culture feels cringe, because it was ironic and dishonest, and Gen Z culture is all about authenticity and irony, authenticity and honesty, which is why looking back at millennial culture, even though they share some aesthetics, feels cringe to Gen Z. And I think that's accurate. So anyway, that does it for today, for us on today's edition of After Party. I always say this, but Wednesdays are the saddest days because I shut down all the equipment, and I know that I'm going to have to keep all of these rants in my head or in my notes app until Monday, which is just such a long time to wait. If you want to get in touch, my email is emily@devilmaycaremedia.com. I am aware that I have a bad habit of foul language, so feel free. Like I actually do try to work on it. I think I dropped one swear, and it was like right at the top of the show. So my apologies for that. I really do try my best. Where nobody can be perfect. That's one of the bad habits that I've had for a long time. Emily at Devil May Care Media, though, if you have any questions, concerns, feedback, I try to answer every email. Thank you so much for watching. We will be here again on Monday at 10 p.m. live. Thank you for watching the show, for subscribing. It's incredibly helpful. Can't wait to see you all next week.